So I just want to share a few words with you. Those of you who were with us last night, heard the story, and even if you weren't with us last night, you have heard the story before because it's one of those foundational narratives. And being a family after 21 years, being together, stories do repeat, even so you try to renew yourself ongoing. And the story was, in 1979, arriving to the United States as a Soviet Jewish immigrant, knowing nothing about Judaism other than that stamp in your passport that destroyed, in many ways, any opportunity you had in a meager life we've shared in a Soviet Kiev, Ukraine. We arrived to the United States. I was 16 years old. I spoke no English whatsoever. My sister was the interpreter, and we were taken to volunteer in the Jewish community, took us to a synagogue to show us what American synagogue looks like. I didn't know what the synagogue looks like altogether, so it could have been American or any other synagogue, but it was truly, I remember the very, very well taken care of green lawn and volunteered, nods to the direction of an elegant woman in a trench coat with a toddler next to her side, and says, "This is our Rabbi Sandy." And my reaction was neither of a surprise nor of any, I never seen a rabbi before, and I didn't know. So a female teacher, a rabbi, a mother, was actually a very fitting and very organic to me because my mother was everything. She ran a household, she was professional, she was extraordinary baker, she took care of things and so in her hands, a lot of things were possible. And Soviet women, and I mentioned that for the ills of the society we were from, were active in all aspects of a society. There was plenty of chauvinism in that life, but nevertheless, they were scholars and teachers and surgeons, and they ran factories, and were mathematicians and physicians, and were represented quite well throughout our life. So let me just say, meeting Sandy and meeting Dennis, our rabbis, our scholars who have over 4.5 decades for Dennis and 3.5 decades, 36 years for Rabbi Sandy, who has blessed with their wisdom Jewish community of Toronto, but, nice slip, of Indianapolis, but even beyond that, and impacted Reconstructionist movement. And very often I remember you, Dennis, quoting your teacher, Mordechai Kaplan, and I've heard this name as I learned English. So for me, Judaism and English and representation of the Judaism, sort of acquiring of North American life, all came at the same time. So what I wanted to say is quote Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, who says, "Teachers open your eyes to the world. They give us curiosity and confidence. They teach us to ask questions. They connect us to the past and future. They are guardians of social heritage. They are the people who really shape our life." So speaking of shaping our life, and I will call on my memory of my father, Zinovi Grimberg, and I remember Dennis looking up at his funeral and seeing you among the, those who came to comfort us, and I will never forget that, as well as both of you, my mother's funeral. And so my father, in one of his description of what happened to his daughter on account of becoming a rabbi, said the following, and I think he even said this to you in the airport at one point. He said, "Rabbi Sandy and Rabbi Dennis made my daughter." And for him, and it's beautiful, translated very well, stands on its own very well in Russian. Means you have impacted and influenced my life and formed me. In English, it's a little bit awkward, to say the least. But at the essence, with his, his incredible wisdom and authenticity, he was self-educated man, and poet in his own right. But for him, my Jewish consciousness and later on my career was shaped and created by you. And I just would like to draw from my memory a couple of experiences and your impact that shapes me to this very moment. So let me just go back to Indiana. I have returned from one of my travels or working overseas. I did not have a very stable life in Indianapolis, self-chosen. There was a lot to see in the world and so forth. Stable meaning I moved and traveled and as I said, studied both and worked overseas. But upon the return from one of my exhausting adventures, I wish I could say that I was an incredible loyal member of Beth Tzedek for many years and attended every Shabbat and was a stellar in getting my high holiday tickets and sat at the feet of my great teachers and drank their words with thirst. Reality was probably a little bit different. I ran right before Rosh Hashanah. I ran into the Beth Tzedek, and probably right before the office closed, with my eyes filled with worry, without a ticket for high holidays. And under your tutelage and under your guidance, I walked out with 2 tickets, feeling no shame, comforted, and was able to attend high holidays. And I remember sitting in Yom Kippur, and very often throughout your teachings, I didn't always understand what you said. Your vocabulary, your associations, I didn't grow up with any Judaism, so there was so much to observe. What I responded to was authenticity of your voice and care and deep warmth in your delivery and the way you cared for people. And that is a feeling. It's not even content. It's the way you were. I came to high holidays, I sit down, I hear the music, and I don't know what happens to me, but something comes undone, and the tears begins to flow. I don't know if it was a woman who came, I did not know, to embrace me. I was on my own. Or it was haunting melodies of our people that called on me. But something happened transformative-wise. And when I broke my fast, I was a better person, or at least committed to being a better human being, a better Jew. Dennis, I remember, this was late 1980s. Indiana was quite racially diverse. There were African Americans, there were white, sort of Indiana people. Did I say something wrong? Is it inappropriate? Sometimes I will say it, I have to turn to Ryan and say, Ryan, did I get this wrong? sometimes, right, sorry about that. But they're like, it looked very divided, right? So anyway, at the services, I remember Friday night, it was in a chapel. I see you getting up and walking. Sandy is sharing Torah, and you're walking back, and you sit down on the back, and you're sort of my spiritual parent, so I follow you with my eyes. And you sit down next to a couple with their 2 children. And what makes this couple unusual in Indiana, but especially in the Jewish community, is they're interracial. And I thought to myself what it was like for them in the late 80s, early 90s, to walk into the sanctuary or into the Jewish setting, being unique and unusual. And the fact that they sat on their own, but you made sure they didn't. And you went and you sat with them for a good part of the service. And that stayed with me. That synagogue should be a place where one is so deeply supported. It can be a place of intellectual growth. It should be a place of spiritual expanding, But above all, it's a place where humanity is understood and cared and loved and appreciated and supported. I worked for several years as a therapist dealing with, other than children, with the most unpalatable part of humanity. I treated, as a clinician, as a therapist, women who were sexually abused. They brought women to the center after horrific rape, beaten up, or it was ugly family stories and histories that women came to bear. It was a women's center called the Julian Center. Eventually, it got a building of its own because a husband shot his wife, and it became so public. Walked into the bank, and it was a domestic argument, and they end up with funding to actually have a place of their own. But while we were in this pathetic little building with little rooms, cellars of working as clinicians, we decided with the group, there were all of us women, we decided we're going to clean the place up. What does that mean? Spiritually clean the place up. So we decided to do a smudging ceremony. I know nothing. I knew nothing, right? But one of the women went to research and designed the ceremony, smudging ceremony, where we were going to take, is it smudging? But in addition, and I want to be respectful, to take incense through room to room, from every room, to be able to renew and get rid of that negative energy that we observed and the building observed. So I thought I should find out what Jews do in that case, and so I called Rabbi Sandy. And at that time, forget if I could read cursive Hebrew. I'm not sure I've seen the alphabet at that time, Hebrew alphabet, but you took time. And after you wrote for me on a piece of paper so I could read it, and I could present the Jewish prayer after we cleaned the building of Shehecheyanu, so we can be renewed dealing with and working in this impossible reality of saving human beings. I don't think that there is a person that walks in at Darchei Noam here in the building and also in a sanctuary, and Rabbi Ryan and I share this, that we do not dash to be able to greet them. And that is your contribution to my life, but also it is sustained by people who are here every Shabbat and who love this community with such passion. And from you, Sandy, to take time to make tradition accessible to someone for whom the doors were shut from very early age and very slowly opened throughout till I could make a commitment to a Jewish life. You made it possible and continue to do so. And that became my role and my calling. I came to you and asked you if I should go to rabbinical school. And I remember the day and the moment, and we were sitting in your study, and you guided me. And we're 21 years and ordained in 2001. So it's a bit more than that. You've been in the rabbinate, each one of you, Rabbi Sandy and Rabbi Dennis, 50 years each. It's 100 years. And yesterday, Agi so thoughtfully said, we can add another 20 years to your 100. 120 is full and round and scrumptious and celebratory. You made me. You made many Jews. You made Reconstructionism. You made Jewish life. And you continue to do so with grace, with sensitivity, aesthetically beautiful and profoundly meaningful. May the Holy One sustain you and this community. Thank you.